middle school and high school for how many years? Like we probably had to get up like what
Dude,
6 o'clock?
that was not good.
You don't
I
think so?
remember, man, I remember like sleeping in class, like legit sleeping in class.
Oh, dude, I definitely slept. My teachers all knew that I was sleeping.
Yeah.
Like I had so many talks with teachers. I remember one time my teacher pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, so do you have a job on the side or something? Because like you're sleeping through all of my classes." And I'm like, "No, I'm just tired." Oh my god, dude! Don't worry,
Right. I'm gonna do a big sip of this coffee and then
I didn't take my Adderall yet today.
we're gonna latch onto this rocket.
Forgot if I took a theanine or not.
Probably a good idea. I haven't done any tests on theanine, but it just seems like one of those like no-brainers based on consensus and feeling and all the confirmation biases that we take on.
Dude, I've been doing a lot of I don't know if this is good or not, but like a lot of or I mean actually a lot of everything that I think is based on what a lot of other people think. It's kind of like, oh, that guy's smart and he kind of knows what he's talking about. So it's probably true. Because yesterday somebody was asking me about the vaccine and they were like, how do you know that it's like safe? And I'm like, I don't actually fucking know. I mean, do you know either? But I mean, like the whole medical community and everybody, this is what I said. I was like, look, CDC said that it's safe. And CDC has been relatively conservative. And there's enough people in this world nowadays where some shit like that wasn't safe. They'd be like, standing on top of a mountain yelling that shit. Yeah. Like, yo, be careful and stuff. And there's not a lot of people doing that with the vaccine. So that's why I think it's safe. And I feel like that's a good enough reason. I don't know if the other person was like bought it, but
Yeah. I mean, so much of what I do is exactly that, secondhandy, like curating secondhand sources. There's just too much in life to sort through and sift through, to not do that. And I don't know if I've ever tried to like formalize what it actually is, but I don't think it's possible to formalize. It's just honestly an intuition and a feeling. There's absolutely no sign, like nothing specific to it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's the world we live in, where you're just making shot clock calls,
How much do you trust your intuition?
I trust it a lot. I would say I rank it pretty high. Whatever intuition means.
What does intuition mean?
Yeah. I guess a non-verbal, non-narrative based decision making. I guess it can still be pretty narrative, but it's like more like emotional content. I guess like you have like various decision making machines, and it's the one that you feed it things that are a little bit more like emotional. I don't know.
It's like you don't know why you know, but you're just like, yo, this has to be true.
Yeah, it's a feeling, right? I think its most classic definition is just a feeling, like being able to predict things of sorts, and like intuition in like an intuition in sports, right? Or an intuition in people, or an intuition in nature. Like some people are just really good at animals, right? Like they do the freaking trains lions. Like, I mean, that's so much intuition, because if you mess up, you're dead, right? Like you.
Yeah, no. I've always highly trusted my intuition as well, but do you think there's people that just don't trust their intuition? They're just like, okay, look, I'm obviously incredibly biased because this is me talking about my intuition, so I'm not going to walk around thinking that it's wrong. But I think my intuition has been pretty good to me, like overall. So I've never had a problem trusting my intuition. if my intuition wants to go one way, but my logic wants to go the other way, there's going to be a fight. You know, it's not going to be, it's not going to be that simple for me to just drop my intuition. And it's always kind of like steered me in the generally correct direction, which is why I follow it, I guess. But obviously I'm incredibly biased to thinking my intuition is correct. Now, do you think there's people that walk around thinking that their intuition is like off?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's a really good question, by the way. I think that kind of kicked off this morning for us. And I would generally paint people as egoic creatures. So I think most people walk around trusting the heck out of their intuition. Maybe they can't actually discern what intuition is in the sense that maybe we're talking about it more localized, but like broader, like, yeah, I think they trust themselves more than most. And I think that maybe for the people who don't trust their intuition as much, I actually do think that's maybe where you venture into the realm of maybe like mental health stuff, right? Like depressions, anxieties, all of that kind of stuff, I think is because there is a lack of self-acceptance and trust and second guessing that starts to kind of like dissolve and fragment your sense of self. And I think, yeah, I would say those people don't trust their intuition, right? They at all about anything. So
yeah, that's crazy, man. It's hard for me to imagine that. You know, not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just I guess I've always like kind of taken that for granted. You know, just like being like, I can't explain that, but it feels right. So I'm probably just gonna kind of assume that it's right and just kind of lean into it and have nothing like horrible, you know, go wrong most of the time.
yeah. I mean, I can think of moments. So it's interesting because when you ask me that question and I do a quick flashback of like moments of like, what's my score of like my intuition score, right? Everyone has an intuition score. And I don't know, even when my intuition has been off, I don't think I've ever really judged it in that moment, right? Because you can as soon as it depends on what you're bookending your life experience as. And so like, yeah, that intuition could have been off, but it was like something you had to learn to like make your intuition even stronger, if you will, you know? So I think often like just like, I don't know, I think I have a high degree of threshold for like testing my intuition. And if it's wrong, it's still not like the worst thing, because it was like the model is built in to like self-correct, or like it's like a machine learning, it's like an algorithm almost. And yeah, so it's interesting. But I think that a lot of my intuition, I would say, comes from, and maybe this like is a thing that extrapolates to the world at large, but you know this, and people who know me know this, I'm like super big into Reddit, and I like to be provocative and tell people like I don't actually read primary sources anymore. I read people arguing about primary sources, and from the way people argue, I can kind of feel out the middle ground, because not to be like too super like philosophical whatever, right? But like the truth, it really does lie somewhere, always somewhere in the middle. I mean that's hard to say sometimes, where I don't know, maybe it's just like a factor of me being a little bit really high on openness on the big five, right? But sometimes you take a super radical, insufferable, immoral position, and sometimes you can kind of like see, okay, maybe like there is some kind of weird sense of like bit of drop of like, even if it's microscopic, truth in there that like I never would have entertained anything in that domain. But so then like that one little bit of truth that I got out of like, I don't know, like say the KKK, right? Like even if you could understand why like far right nationalism exists, you learn a little bit something about or a lot of something, I guess I would say, about like human nature and stuff like that. So anyway, I digress. The whole point is to say that I love just watching people argue, and then somewhere in that I pick my position, right? Like, and it wavers. You know, sometimes you read really good debates online, you're like, oh man, boom, that guy got it. Oh, you know, that person got it. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, arguments are interesting. If you think about how an argument forms, like it's always like, obviously, two people coming up with completely different like perspectives, probably because they had completely different life experiences. A lot of times, like, especially like ideological debates that are not going to get solved anytime soon. You know, like when you say something like, why does a KKK, you know, person exist, or why does far right, why do their ideas exist, and why do people argue so fervently? And then you have the opposite side where something equally like true, and you know, somebody else on the opposite side is equally arguing this thing just as true, and they fully believe this like to their death as well. Why do you have two guys on both sides like standing here like shouting at the top of their lungs, fully believe, like neither guy is faking, like nobody's faking this, you know? And why does that exist? And I think a lot of times those to take a step back and even understand why something like that exists, rather than to like pick a side, is probably, or to me, like sometimes even more interesting. You know what I mean? Like what mechanisms of the human mind make it so that you know, these two like creatures or things or whatever, like literally stand on both sides. Like how did that happen? You know, and I don't know, how someone was raised, the experiences, you know, through their families, the experiences through where they grew up, the experiences like through like life in general, shape their beliefs. And now, you know, these are the beliefs that they think to be true, and through that perspective, that's 100% true for them.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that you mentioned to me before about how like you really valued adding perspectives, right, to your catalog of perspectives. And I think what's interesting, as you were talking, it reminded me of in high school, you know, we were a bunch of like there was a group of us who were, you know, just like really nerdy or whatever. And I remember having one friend who would always like, like, you know, diametrically opposed is such a like, you know, unnecessary word. Like everything's opposed. Like, why do you need the word diametrically? But I think as you're talking, I do really think it's interesting how we almost always do assume that things are diametrically opposed, right? Like it's this false dichotomy that, like you said, one person's here, the other person's here, without kind of, or maybe it's like linear, we think it's this, but really it's this like 360-degree pattern, and someone could actually be like orthogonal or adjacent,
Right.
You know what I mean? And as people start to rally in their positions, you start to see a mapping of it. And I think the structure of things has always, or the system or the structure of things has always been so much more interesting to me. And so like each one of these contributors adds to like literally we're talking about degrees of difference.
Right.
Right. But the strength of a, like you said, the strength of a certain person's like axis, how heavy they lean into that, how much like society starts to lump in on that. I mean, you just start to get this like shifting sense. And I think that's what's shifting is another word I think a lot about when you brought the word argument. These things that like what we're doing are just so fluid. Like how do you even capture this, the fluidity of this thing? And I don't know. Yeah, I guess we're talking about theory of knowledge at this point, but like it's definitely the most interesting thing. Come on, right? Like I mean,
yeah, it's
right?
like the why behind, like it's not even the argument. It's like the why behind something latches onto like this thing and like stays on one side, stays on another. And then what happens when like, you know, like 100 of their friends pick one position? Like, does that make it so that, you know, you get closer to that thing, and then you can't, and then knowing what we know about the human mind, like, you know, creating our own biases so that we don't have to re-examine the world every single moment, you know, like Like I don't want to have to get up in the morning and reread the whole news and form a whole new opinion on, you know, whether or not I support Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or whoever, right? You know, how I came to that opinion probably happened at some point, like, you know, a few years ago. And ever since then, I probably, every time I get up, I'll probably just read the news. And I'm like, oh yeah, obviously, yeah, Bernie, yeah, that's the guy. Oh yeah, the other guy sucks. Yeah, obviously not him. And then I don't want to have to do that every single morning, you know, read like hours and hours and hours and be like, oh yeah, Bernie's still the guy, or Trump's still not the guy, or whatever the debate may be. And that's a shortcut I take, and that's a shortcut everyone takes. And there's a reason we take that shortcut, because we don't have, you know, hours on hours to research every single topic over and over and over again. Now, I think that's a feature, not a flaw. But obviously, you know, when you take shortcuts, there's gonna be a you're gonna lose something. You know what I mean? Like it's not all pluses here. And so what happens when I go for years and years not understanding that I guess that feature exists, and not re-examining my positions, or even taking the time and the energy to take a step back and re-examine, because that's not something that's going to automatically happen. The reason that mechanism exists for me to take that shortcut is to save energy. And then so if I want to like turn that feature off, I have to literally be like, okay, all right, it's been a while since I've thought about this, and I don't know, am I does any of this, do you do any of this, does any of this ring true to you as well?
Yeah, 100%. Like there's a lot of anchors there. I think it is a fundamental fact of human nature for sure to rely on these heuristics, right, if you will. And what I thought about is, in our last discussion, we talked about like different types of games. And my first thought was like, yeah, this type of human way of being is like, you know, arguably what got us to be as successful as we are. It like allowed us to like transcend and beat the hell out of like, you know, lower level games. And my first thought was like, we are obviously on the opposite end of that now, right? Like that programming has run amok, which is why we have meditation, which is why there's psychedelic research, which is really promising and innovative now, as far as like just resetting and allowing those wirings to kind of like redo themselves, maybe in a new updated way. And but then I do think back about like Stoicism or ancient philosophy, having been there over 2,000 years ago, and it's still the same meditations on not letting the brain run too wild, right? And even though life back then, I mean, there were similar structures, I would say, like we're not that different. But it definitely like is in opposition to my hypothesis that like, and this is like the naturalistic fallacy, right? This idea that if we return more to a natural state, like everything quote unquote natural is better for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think we probably have to like that, like all of nature and all of a return to those types of games with the maybe the hope that we might drop back into a better level of thriving within our means. That's probably gone, right? Like you know, we always joke about simulations in VR. Like it's at the point probably where we just pick elements of nature that we want to carry forward, or elements of simple living and mindfulness that we want to carry forward into us. But we're rocketing into the future at this point. And there is no return to natural commune living as much, right? Which is, I think, a part of yours and I's like personal brand, as you know, as we've like brought all of our interests together, is that, you know, dabbled in a lot of new age stuff, yet we are still playing like this capitalist game A business thing. And be able to kind of like put that together into like a compelling way of living, you know, we're not, and it's accessible to people around us, I think, which is one of the reasons why we're even starting this podcast. Like, you know, like it's, if you're too one thing, like people can disregard you, and then you're just like kind of like on your own island, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
and and not everyone maybe shares the same need to be heard or like, you know, like have their thoughts be heard or whatever. But certainly I do. I care that people care to listen about what I have to say, and yeah, so it's important. I don't know. Yeah, interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, you said a lot there. I'm not sure what to I'm not sure what to pick.
I want to jump on one thing real quick though that I had been wanting to talk to you about. I was listening to the last episode of Third Eye Drops, and it's funny because it's very much like what we're doing here. He brought on one of his he's been on as a recurring guest. He's more like a friend at this point, and he's working on this new book. And I lifted that game A term from him because that's a topic that they were talking about. Where how do you when you talk about invoking revolution or transformation, right? There's a game A that has just like dominated and just like totally governs and seeps into like everything we know. I would, you know, and so it's, game A is like, let's say America today, right? This is how it works. And then, but there's these game B principles that we want to somehow bring forward that are clearly, maybe they're more, you know, like say, environmentalism, right? Like working against global warming, climate change. Like that is a game B principle of more like altruism and whatever. And there is a vested benefit in like using game B principles, more cooperation at a certain model. And how do you flip that? Like, how do you like slowly, how does that even work, right? How do you manifest and flip it so that like now game B is the prevailing dominant rule set, while playing game A all along the way, you know?
That's a very deep topic. I don't have an immediate opinion. I mean, I really like that topic though, because I've definitely like read about it from at least a couple perspectives, not like anything deeply, but anytime I kind of like run into something that talks about that, and I don't know what the answer is, and I've seen that obviously, like I'm trying to go through my catalog of random shit that I've collected, you know, from reading and stuff like that, and I have at least 3 data points, and they're actually from like pretty different sources. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. How do you transcend from the game that we're playing to a future game, and do we ever transcend? I mean, that's a problem. I mean, you know, like we might never transcend, and we might never solve the global warming thing, or like whatever problem that we have that requires like not game A, but like, you know, let's say game B is like requires like something else, and it's like over here, and if we can't get there, then maybe we never transcend, and we ever like kind of make it as a species. You know what I mean? Like if there's like a meteor coming and it's gonna hit us, and we need everybody to kind of cooperate in order to figure out how to like thwart this I guess like existential threat to humanity. And
that was supposed to be COVID, right?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was supposed to. I mean, everyone's saying that COVID was the, I guess like the drill, you know, like the fire drill, and it seems like we failed, or whatever we did wasn't up to par. I think I remember when Jonathan Haidt, I think so the UVA professor that I think you guys had, and he wrote the book The Happiness Hypothesis. I know he's done some work around this. And I don't know what his actual conclusion was, but he was talking about like bees and stuff, and how like, you know, bees like have some way of knowing. And I think, guessing through science, they probably know how bees know at this point. You know, there's probably some chemicals and stuff, but they have some way of knowing, like, you know, how to like work as a whole colony, where everybody is on the same like thing to like protect the queen and like do what they need to do for the whole colony to survive. And I remember in the beginning when I was reading his discussions about that, he was kind of like, man, this is so long ago, I don't want to like misquote him or anything like that. So these are just my thoughts. But he was talking about like whether or not it could, like humans can ever get on that level in terms of like that thing. And I don't know, that was just that's what your discussion reminded me of just now. He talked about that. I know, like from another perspective, Adam Grant, who is a psychologist, and he writes a lot about, I guess, like workplace culture and stuff like that. A while ago, I read one of his books, and he presented the idea of, I think the book was called Give and Take, and he was talking about givers and takers. And it was a really interesting read for me because he presented the idea of, you know, some people, their strategy is to take. If you always just take and never give, that's a strategy that kind of works too. Some people, their strategy is always to match. So if you give me something, I'll give you something equal in return. But then some people, their strategy is to always give, like they're, you know, givers and stuff. And he was asking the question, which one of these three strategies in the long term is the best strategy in terms of like who's the most successful type? And it was really interesting to me. Oh, do you have I talked to you about this before? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I think you have talked to me, which is I'm excited to hear it again because I think it's really relevant in the like big broad picture that we're painting. But yeah, definitely continue because it's like I think when you first told it to me, my guess of what you were going to say next was wrong, which is I'm really excited for where you're about to go here.
Yeah. So initially, I thought the answer was going to be like matcher, was going to be like, you know, the person that, because I mean, if you match and, you know, someone else learns to match with you, then, you know, you kind of like, you have a really good strategy against the takers. You know, if someone doesn't match you, then you just kind of like, you know, don't match with them anymore, and you're good. And then with the giver, then you're kind of, I guess, like capitalizing on that too. But he says that the people that tended to be on the top were always the givers. But he also said the people that tended to be on the bottom were also the givers. And the reason that was interesting was because, I mean, the reason he gave for it was because he equated it back to, okay, I'm literally trying to summarize this man's book in like probably like 2.5 minutes. So this might not work well, but we're gonna try here. He talked about positive sum games and zero sum games. And for people that, I know you know what they are, but for people that are listening that might not know what they are, a zero sum game is something like, in order for, okay, like let's say when I used to play poker, in poker, if I'm playing against you in poker, let's say I have $100 and you have $100, in order for me to make money, you have to lose money. So, and literally poker is set up that way. Like I cannot be a winning poker player without taking someone else's money. So there's no value being derived. It just goes, you know, if Steven loses $50, I win $50, then plus 50 Hack, minus 50 Steven. That's the only way I make money. So the game is a zero sum game. Everything when you add it up always equals to zero. However, in life, there's other things such as positive sum games. And he's saying that those games are, if you find those games as a giver, you thrive more in those games. So an example of a positive sum game might be like, let's say Hack and Steven have $100. And instead of playing poker, I'm like, yo, Steven, this is a zero sum game. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this because we're just going to waste a bunch of time and we're going to end up with zero anyways, or a net of zero. Why don't we take our $200, put it together, and then we go and, I don't know, sign up for like a poker class and learn to get better together as a group. And then we can go and make more money together. And then let's say we go, I don't know, make $400 somewhere else. And then me and you both split the profits. So now it's like a positive thing. Or like if I'm like at HEH and you know, and we're like trying to add value to everyone's lives, and over time, hopefully that matriculates into something that's like a bigger pie, and then we split that bigger pie. So he's saying that the givers thrive if they find positive sum games, but givers do not thrive in situations where it's like a zero sum game. But you happen to create more value if you find these positive sum games and be a giver. So I mean, that's why that kind of reminded me of what you were just talking about with the whole, is humanity ever gonna be able to go from like the game that we're playing now to this altruistic game? And it might not even make sense, you know, to do certain things, like, or it might not make obvious sense for like, you know, somebody to to do certain things, but as a whole, it's incentivized for humans to, let's say, solve global warming. But as an individual, it probably doesn't make too much damn sense for me to be the only guy to like try to figure this thing out when everyone else is just running around, you know, like trying to make money on the stock market or something.
Awesome topic. Yeah, awesome. And I think there's probably been this theme of a lot of our conversations as of late, where they always kind of arrive in this space, which I would sum up as game theory, right? Like basically game theory underlies things like economics, underlies things like sociology and all these things, right? Like how we behave as systems. And I'm just going to add a little bit to what you said because it just sparked a lot of stuff. Maybe just build on it. But yeah, I was thinking about the prisoner's dilemma, right? As like probably the most famous quintessential example of game theory. And again, for those who don't know about the prisoner's dilemma, it's this decision-making matrix, right? Where basically two people get caught by the police and they are interrogated independently. And there's 4 potential outcomes, right? Depending on whether or not each of those 2 individuals decides to cooperate, right, with each other, even though they are separate, alone, or they choose to try to save themselves and come out ahead, right? And it's funny, like most people would choose to save themselves, obviously, even though when you take an objective look at the situation, if both people chose to cooperate, the outcome is just like way better across the board. It's just the fact that we're not mind readers and there's like so much physical things holding us down to be looking out for ourselves, right? First and foremost, and the people in our corner, to act selfishly in a way. And I don't know, I do think that sometimes a lot of things that we talk about, things like that, my first place I go to is like, how do we export this, right, to people? Because it's such a profound, I think, nugget of knowledge. And I was thinking about how right now, at least, there's like a interest in psychology, and the Stanford marshmallow experiment with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking with Leo, your nephew now, and Liana, your niece, I wonder if there is a marshmallow experiment we can run on kids, but around the prisoner's dilemma, right? Like, hey, and I thought that would be fun. But I guess the overall idea is to say that, I think that the world at large would probably benefit from being aware of our own selfishness, knowing that it exists for a reason, but then like maybe the activation energy it takes to overcome that and access like cooperative games, and like, I don't know, being realistic, I guess, about when to access those games. Because I mean, the selfish game, and I think that's a thread that is probably going to be running through everything I say for a long time, is that like you can't forget about the selfish game and why the selfish game exists, and the usages of the selfish game like carried forward. But they apply it whatever level of analysis you're looking at. Arguably, the level of responsibility and the level of analysis that we apply to individuals is like far gone, right? There's this there's this take in a lot of media advertising that this whole idea that you or I could make a notable impact on the environment by choosing to not use a plastic straw or making sure to recycle the thing. And I try, don't get me wrong, right? I try, encourage people to try, but it's such a negligible impact once you examine scale. And I think that at this point, you just it's not about the individual, and maybe it's these nation states now who are gridlocked and unable to hit that. Like, it's really in that quadrant, the prisoner's dilemma, it's not people sitting there, it's like full on nations. Israel and Palestine, like a crazy situation once you start to decompose it from a game theory perspective, why neither side can actually make a move. Like, like, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping through a lot of places,
No, you're
caffeine
good,
and
dude.
Adderall's hitting, but it makes me think about like that time we were up at our friend's place. It was a college reunion in, up in New York, and we sat and we played chess for like 6 hours straight or something. And those of us who knew how to play sat in the middle, and those of us who didn't were just kind of watched the side. But like that, it was interesting because in the chess world there was like certain situations that were like unbeatable, or the parameters of that certain situation were what they were based on board positioning. And so I think at the nation state level, you have some of these situations where they can't move and they are locked into game A selfishness. There's just no way. I don't know, right? And almost the fact that we have nuclear weapons now has like entrenched us to not even be able to move anymore, because I'm not advocating for war and bloodshed, but in all systems, like destructive forces are a means of evolution and transformation, right? Like wildfires are a way to kind of bring forth new change, create fertility. And so this is all to say, like, I don't know, like, how to get through that, because I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, man. There's definitely a lot of jumping off points. One thing that I had stored in my head the whole time you were talking, because in the very beginning you were saying, oh, we should figure out a way to kind of like do the marshmallow test, but like in a prisoner's dilemma type of situation for children. I don't know why my mind goes here, but I was like, what have you read in the, the Stanford prison experiments on children? I don't know. That was just ridiculous, but I was just kind of, that popped in my head. I was like, okay, get that thought out of there. But
that's when we get canceled. That's how we're gonna get canceled. Oh my God.
Not gonna do that, obviously, but that was just funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, it goes back to saying like how do we transcend that game? Like how do you go from, like, you're locked into a prisoner's dilemma. Like, if you inch away from this one equilibrium of like, hey, if this guy steps over this line, I'm gonna fuck him up. Then if you even like inch one step forward, he might actually take a step across that line and not only fuck you up, but your entire family and your whole nation. You know what I mean? And that's like where that is. That's the equilibrium that has reached over however many years or decades or millennia or centuries of that debate, right? And you can't inch away from that. It's just not as simple as what it is, and if it was, then obviously I think people would have solved it by now, but like it's not that simple. And is there even a way that you can transcend something like that? Like is it even possible? Like if I don't know that it's possible. Like it's definitely something we should talk about, because I mean that would be I guess like a more collective view, not just like through like us talking about it, but a way to incentivize a collective like hive mind for whether it's humanity or entire nations or entire like groups of people, or even like like small groups of people, like your immediate family, building like a whole like positive sum game within your group of people or within your company or within your culture, and maybe spreading that out somehow. I mean, I don't even know. Like you literally have to take very deliberate steps in setting something like that up, even in a small group of people, to get that to work. I mean, you have to take very deliberate steps. Like think about like in your friend group. I mean, so we've had friend groups before where certain people like have existed in there, and then they do something, and you're like, oh, like that person can't exist in the friend group anymore. It's because like in general friend groups, like you probably want like a certain dichotomy of positive sum game, in your family and whatever, and then someone does something that's like very revealing that they're not playing that positive sum game, but you want to keep the the idea of a positive sum game, so everyone keeps on trying to make the pie bigger for everybody, then you have to set up certain parameters and rules and get people to understand them. But it's not that easy, because you have to understand that you're working against the mechanism of the human mind, of the individual, of like the selfish game that we've always been playing, that have gotten our genes passed all the way down to where we are now. So how do you do something? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I mean, I think the question you brought up, you know, from our talking today has been very, it's something that we can think about forever, I think. And
Yeah.
and maybe not even get anywhere, but it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such an interesting topic, and actually one I've pinned as one that I would like to have more of an academic framework around, which has always been what are the levers, what is the secret sauce with the equation? I know that you are interested in this too, with businesses that you run, like of culture, right? Of not the broader culture we live in, that we don't even realize it's water, right? Is the air we breathe, but like these smaller cultures, like, I mean, it's definitely really interesting. I had a thought and it just evaporated. But here was my thought. And this is where I probably start to put on my like techno utopian hat, right? This idea that technology is like the way, and it's going to save the world. But I mean, I think that there is something that's happening with modern technology, right? In modern computing, in its ability to disrupt like none else and actually affect social behavior like nothing else we've had. And maybe there's something to like pull off of that. And sometimes when I do these thought experiments, I always imagine like the most totalitarian, collectivist, hive mind version, right? Where individually is wiped out completely for the benefit of the whole. And arguably in this thought experiment, everything is better. Like it's like people like to do these sci-fi thought experiments where the individual is wiped out, but the collective is this like awful thing that no one would ever want to live in. But let's imagine like there is this like crazy future where it's the Brave New World feature, right? Where you're born into something, to your role, and you love it, you're happy, you're you know, and society is like perfect. And I think that technology is kind of putting us toward that path. Like we are willingly giving up our privacy and our data for so many gains in quality of life and convenience, and for new types of human experiences, right, enabled by technology. But also in doing so, we are kind of disempowering ourselves and giving up a lot of our own agency, right? Like I was thinking about probably the next revolution that's going to happen is, okay, let me take a step back. One big thing that has happened thus far is Yelp, right? Online review systems, like, and you know this, like online reputations make or break a business. And if you start to understand the algorithms that underlie that, you know, the court of public opinion is just this needle that's like this, and it can hard bank in either way.
Mm-hmm.
But that is starting to become a mirror that comes back now to us as individuals and consumers, right? Like behavior is being policed. You have this concept of a Karen who has come up, who's like this like awful consumer. Let me speak to your manager, right? Even I personally experienced this recently where I stopped using Uber because of the whole like PR fiasco that they had a while ago, and I switched over to Lyft. And then since using Lyft, I have this like amazing rider score, right? Because like that's a score thing that exists now. Like you can rate your customer. And then the other day I switched back to Uber because it was like $7 cheaper. And my rider score in Uber was at a time where like we were going out to clubs and I was calling it for like our rowdy friends. And I have a terrible rider score there. And I had to get in this like awful car. Right. And it felt so unfair. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, but to the world, to Uber in their data sphere, I am like, 3.5 stars, like as an individual. Like that
And
is
you 3.5
very,
stars.
I just made that up. But I mean, that's probably being, that's probably being nice. We were a rowdy group of people, right, getting into a car, but
I'm sure I was a part of that, so my bad.
yeah, you're good, man. Good memories. You wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade any amount of stars for those memories. But it's interesting, right? Because now my quality of service, who I am, my identity, it's this universal credit score is fragment. It starts to exist in different places, right? Like I think we all sign up to have a credit score. Like that's what governs this entire country. Like, but now there's like my Uber score, my Airbnb score, my whatever score, right? In restaurants, there might be now like a meta score of me across like all these restaurants. And it's going to be really interesting because like it's flipped back now, right? And what are we going to do with it, right? The powers that be, the people with the keys to the kingdom, if they're working in tech or they have any sort of influence on this, they have the ability to really, really influence the way people behave now based on their sense of shame or peer pressure or whatever, enabled in a new way by technology. So I think that's going to be a very interesting and watch, man, because I mean, with some people, that might be the only way, like you said, to almost force their hand because they're not going to like act unselfishly. Even the best person won't even know what's selfish and unselfish, but like technology can probably help change that. Now, are we willing to sign up for that? I don't know. That's kind of a scary thought, right? It gets a little bit scary.
The long-term equilibrium of that is everyone gets hooked up to a machine like the Matrix, and then we get, I guess, in this sedative state where we exist in a simulation. So like a simulation within a simulation, and I don't know. Is that is that desirable? Is that the long-term equilibrium of all these all this technology? And I mean, oh my God, dude, like I don't want to open another can of worms because I know we're wrapping up on the 40 minutes here, but I mean, we probably already passed it by at least a few minutes, but yeah, man, like, I mean, oh my God, there's so many, like literally there's like three very like big pats I could take off of what you just said, and it's all like in here, but I don't want to like, if I spill it out.
I think if I know that we're going over, but if I selfishly took that spot, you should take it, and then we
dude,
can.
There's no selfish here. We're literally back and forth. It feels great.
Yeah. No, but you take it. I think you take it to us to the close, and then we have to do our
debrief
review and just have these topics because I think we're still in the exploratory phase, which is great.
Yeah.
But it would be great because like these are all things that this is what we wanted, right? We wanted things to be able to know that we can come back to.
Okay.
Usually it just ends. Usually it's just over and we forget, and it's like,
hang on, what you were just talking about?
So basically, sorry.
Technology, like turning us into like a freaking like matrix society. That's what I got from that. Number one, because a lot of times, like I was so that's one jumping off point. Like that comic you sent me yesterday, the one where the guy's like like thriving in life, and he's like, yeah, life is great, this is amazing, all that stuff, and then like the last frame, he has like a VR thing on his head, and he's like this like out of shape dude like in his living room, and it's like a messy like room and stuff like that. I laughed at that, but I laughed very uncomfortably at that. I was like, Lo, that's funny, But yo, dude, that's fucked up. And not because like, you know, and if you sent me that like 10 years ago, I probably would have like laughed like just fully comfortably. And I guess I probably have to find a link to that thing so I could paste it in here. But it was a very uncomfortable laugh for me. And I showed our friend Vicky that. And I was like, yo, Steven sent me this shit. And I laughed, but it was very uncomfortable. And then I explained to her, and then now she understands why as well. And a lot of that was what you said in the last like 5 minutes. So that's one. That's one jumping off point. And if you think about the way technology is going, like, you know, when we were talking about digital identity from the very first like episode of this, and how we're also unconsciously getting deeper and deeper into our phones. Like it's not out of awareness. Like people are not aware of what's going on a macro level. Like people are not aware that, you know, like the algorithms are so much stronger now. The like the programs like TikTok and shit. Like I mean that shit like TikTok is actually like pretty fucking addicting.
Who would have thought?
You click on that shit and it's like 30 seconds of like the most amazing content over and over and over again. Like how can you even stop? You know what I mean? And the TikTok is getting plugged right into like Gen Z and younger. And you probably people like, you know, our age and older too. You know, like if I'm sure if I was a boomer, and I probably kind of am to some people, and I was like scrolling through TikTok, I'm sure the algorithm will figure something out to keep me hooked as best it can. And you think about like, you know, people like Leo and stuff at some point is gonna get TikTok. And, oh yeah, this is great, Uncle Hack. Like, I can't believe I have a TikTok now. And then he's just on that shit for like 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And the algorithm gets stronger. And then the next thing that's like TikTok, but like more addicting. And you're just subconsciously like getting everyone literally just like, at what point does it stop becoming a cell phone and becomes a VR hat? At what point does it stop becoming a VR hat and it becomes that Neuralink shit that fucking Elon Musk is developing, where it just like plugs into the nodes of your brain that understand exactly like, oh, if I fire like, you know, like a signal down this node, it makes them feel this way, a signal down this node. And then that feels better than taking off the VR hat. And then that becomes, oh shit, like, I guess the Matrix was, you know, is what the equilibrium of society is, you know, like, I don't know, but maybe that's how you, if somebody develops Neuralink, let's say Elon Musk, and if everybody needs to get reprogrammed to have a collective hive mindset, maybe that's how you do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. So I guess that's one jumping off point that I was just like, when you were talking about that, I was like, holy shit, dude.
Oh my gosh. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that queued me up a really fun jumping off point as well.
You want to do yours and then we'll close?
Sure.
Yeah, do yours. I feel like anytime we have something good, I'm cool with keeping it going. And we can always slice these into like, you know, like 2-part. Like if we feel like we got enough content, we just be like, all right, 30 minutes this week twice.
Yeah.
And that could be a 2-parter.
So this one is so fun to me. And but I'm gonna come out and say right now that just get out of the way, because every time I talk about this stuff, people are like, "Oh, have you seen Westworld?" No, I'm so sorry, I haven't seen Westworld.
I haven't either, dude. If you want to start watching it, let me know. We'll hold each other accountable.
I think we have to. I mean, all topics on like consciousness and all that stuff, like I think lead to. I think Westworld is a really great modern capture for that. So anyway, that aside, what is really interesting about what you said, and it's a thought that I came into, it's not original, but it was super interesting when I started thinking about it, was the idea that, well, again, back to the naturalistic fallacy and what's natural, right? It's probably one of the biggest definitions we take for granted on what natural actually is. Like, well, spoiler alert, nothing is actually natural, right? To the universe at large, matter is matter. Doesn't matter, like, you know, if it's squishy and it bleeds and it's, you know, or it's like hard and metallic, right? And matter has just transmuted over time to higher levels of order. It's just what it is, right? Entropy on one side and just like the push of order and and accretion. And so so what I'm trying to say is like when you watch a lot of these like sci-fi shows that have to deal with things like the Matrix or artificial intelligence like superseding us, it's always come with this like somber note, right? That like we have something, we don't want to be wiped out. Like it's existential, right? We are like, nature is good, humans are good. We are, it's a magical, we're God's creatures, it's magical. And then these like sterile, cold machines are gonna come and like wipe away what makes humans like life what it is. But another take on that is that it's just evolution, and we should look at it with kind of the same almost softness and reverence that we see like the continuation of our species, right? Like when you look at Leo, you're seeing continuation of the species, continuation of your specific line. There's a feeling there of like, I'm living on, I'm carrying on. We like this, it doesn't end with me. Now, with the artificial intelligence piece and the influx of machinery into us, right? If we start to swap parts of our bodies out with machine parts, and we start to become something much different, it is not so much that we're losing where we came from. Like we are just actually hitting that next stage of evolution, maybe where we leave our biological bodies behind completely, right? And that shouldn't almost not even be seen as like a bad thing in a way. Like when you look at the evolution, the famous evolution diagram of a monkey crawling and getting more upright and losing its hair, turns into a human, and then like literally the next one's a cyborg, right? Cyborg being part human, part machinery, like that is the thing. And I don't know, it's like really interesting, like and like that proto cyborg that happens on the line from us is like a grandkid almost in a way, even to the point where like, like they were actually like just, it's like our great grandson might just be a robot, you know what I mean? Like and there's and I love a lot of these sci-fi things because they do a good job sometimes of humanizing these like machine characters where you're just like, oh my God, like I know that this character they built is just a machine, but I actually, actually kind of feel something, and there actually is life that they actually matter. Why? I don't know. Like they're still a machine. You should just reboot them, but like there's something about that. So anyway, that was what I kind of thought too is an optimistic take, I think, and an optimistic spin on I think a very potentially nefarious topic. But again, like I said, I think at my heart, I'm an idealist when it comes to technology. But I don't know. I think it's just seeping through.
I think it's good to be. I mean, I think it's a wave that's coming that no matter what you do, like we're gonna live in a technological, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there's gonna be more technology, not less, by probably a significant portion amount. So, I mean, obviously, what are you gonna do about it? Like go live in the woods, or
no, there's no way.
You gotta just ride that wave, I think. But I don't know, man. There's still a lot of jumping off points. We gotta start watching Black Mirror again or Westworld, like shows like that. I know they're just fucking shows, but like when you were talking earlier about like the rating system with Uber and like Lyft and all that stuff, you remember like did you watch the episode of Black Mirror when like everyone was going around, but they had like their ratings like floating on top of their heads?
Yeah.
And like it was kind of like Yelp review, but for like humans. And then like, if you were like to go rent a place, but your score was below a certain amount, you had to either pay more or they wouldn't even accept you in that community. And then people were just acting fake as fuck to get higher scores. And then there was like the girl in the score like cared so much about her score, but her brother was literally like, yo, this is fucking stupid. Like, I'm not gonna act like that. And he had like a 3.2 and she had like a 4.3 or some shit like that. And she cared so much about her score, but she was fake as fuck. And when we watched that episode, like it probably came out in like 2013 or some shit. I remember we watched the episode and I was like, oh, that's funny. It's like Yelp, but for like humans. Yeah, like that's ever gonna might be a thing.
No,
but I mean, like, how can that not be a thing anymore? You know, you're talking about Yelp and Lyft. I mean, that's literally, it's, if you extrapolate between when that show came out, 2013, like, you know, watching that show, it's like, oh, that's funny, haha, that's funny, right? But now it's like, haha, that's, what the fuck, you know, like it's like that
no,
uncomfortable
yeah.
laugh. Give that another like 10 years, give that another 5 years, you know, like, I mean, there's gonna be Yelp for humans. I mean, there's enough data to make a Yelp for humans. There is enough data to make Yelp for humans. In fact, fuck man, I know, dude, we're like going way over on time.
Go for it, man, go for it.
All right, so yesterday I was talking to Vicky, and she's for everyone that doesn't know my friend Vicky, she's like 22, so she's like one generation, like she's probably closer. Is that considered Gen Z?
I have no idea.
Okay, she grew up like obviously with Facebook and stuff like that from middle school. I didn't have that until like the end of college, and I think you probably had it at the beginning of college. So for people that are wondering like what that means, like she's just of the generation that kind of grew up with technology more than our generation. And she was, I was telling her about, you know, digital identity and stuff like that, and how crazy it is nowadays. You grow up with a digital identity that kind of like almost like self-reinforces how people treat you, and over time that it's such a huge influence on your personal identity that people don't even realize it at this point. And she was like, yeah, dude, I don't know if I can put her opinion out here, but whatever, she won't care. She was like, yeah, dude, like a lot of times, like when people have like Instagrams that are like, I guess like not like well curated, or like, you know, people haven't put a lot of thought into it, it's hard to take that person like seriously nowadays. And when she said that, I was kind of like, oh, that's crazy, because my Instagram is literally just, I mean, you know, my Instagram, I posted 3 pictures in 2012, and I just stopped. And I use it to like follow accounts I like and stuff like that, but I literally barely give 2 shits about what I post and stuff like that. And you know, when she said that, I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then we started talking about how, like, you know, online dating profiles, like let's say like on Hinge or on like OkCupid or whatever the thing is now. I mean, the people that know how to play that game, they obviously they do well in those like scenarios. And I've never knew how to play that game. So like I think like six years ago or something like that, I was on OkCupid. Man, I was like just like striking out like left and right. And I was like, what the hell's going on, man? Like, I mean, I'm not like ugly or anything, but like it goes back to, it's kind of like everything's moving more towards in that direction, more towards in the direction where you have to like have this online identity, this digital identity. Is it ever going to get to the point where it becomes like a Yelp thing for humans, and a score that follows you everywhere? Imagine a credit score, but for how you like live, and people treat you based on that score, and that score is visible somewhere. It's like floating around on your head or something, or somebody can just go on Facebook and they just like have a score, and you're like, oh, Steven's a 4.2. I don't know if I want to be friends with that guy, because the other guy's a 4.4. You know, I want to be friends with him. And I don't know, and it's kind of like that. I mean, now it's like likes, kind of, right? I mean, maybe subconsciously someone gets a lot of likes, you're like, oh, that person's probably like someone interesting. But yeah, man, just watching like society kind of like inch the way it's been going since we were like since like 10 years ago. It's been super interesting. I don't know if it's good or bad, but interesting for sure.
I mean, it's gonna go there for sure, right? Like since the beginning of time, humans like to we signal to each other, right? We signal status, we signal our trustworthiness, we signal, you know, and it's, you said, like, you're right, it's been physical, like, you know, the clothes you wear, the haircut you have, the way you smell, right? There was a period where that was a big difference. Now, like, you have an Apple Watch, that's a status symbol, you know. When the digital one catches up and can maybe get displayed, you can see it on somebody. I think that's an inevitability for sure. You know, absolutely an inevitability.
So what do we do? Just watch?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, because like I think when we talk about all of this stuff, there's always the so what, right? That's hanging there. How do you convert all this type of analysis into like some type of meaningful so what? doesn't even have to be an action, but it's like, so what? What's the takeaway? And I think that you bring up Black Mirror. I mean, kudos to that team. I think they take sci-fi and use it to explore near future, not future, near future. And they nailed it, I think. And I think all paths, the so what for me, you know, all paths lead back to education. You know, I don't see why not have a semester on Black Mirror in high school or something, right? Like it's real content that our kids should be engaging with, you know, like you'd make that argument. And I think that with the age of adulthood, it just keeps going further and further out to the right. Like it used to be like, you know, 16 you could drive, 18 you could have war. Like, you know, you're an adult now. You know, that society at large, that development has been arrested for a lot of people, certainly myself, generation coming out. And I think we need to fill that. We need to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about that time. I mean, arguably the ramp is a little bit too long right now, probably people would say, but I would say that I had the good fortune of being able to do a ton of liberal arts classes. Like, you know, I double majored in 2 liberal arts, and I got to take everything under the sun. And not everyone, I think, is going to be drawn to that same well, but that's the whole idea behind a general education, right? And everyone's like, why do I need to learn this? Like, remember we talked about let's cue that up as the next topic for what subject you'd cut, right?
For history.
Yeah. Boom, provocative. We could, like, that should be the title of the next podcast. Is like,
when I said that, I didn't think it was provocative, but then when you guys were like, what the fuck, history? You got history? I was like, oh, well, my bad.
No, it's great. It's such a great thought-provoking question that way. But yeah, so anyway, that's
canceled out here, dude.
In closing.
Yeah, let's close up, man. Dude, how the hell am I supposed to go to work after this? We've literally just been talking about like existential threat to humanity, and not only like ones that we kind of know of going in the future, like global warming shit, but like immediate ones, like, oh shit, we're in Black Mirror. You know, like those like little like, holy shit, like that used to be like, I can't watch Black Mirror now because it makes me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? It's too real. Like they need to chill out with that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wanna do you have anything else to say? I think it's a good I think we got a lot of good conversation today. Maybe we'll cut into two shows to if we want. But.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's we're coming up on the hour, so let's close here.
Yeah.
You know, thank you this is number 3, right?
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of refinement in this journey, for sure. Certainly on my own contributions to it, to kind of take this to the next step. I think the 3 have been fun to kind of just like lay it all out there. But I think let's close it. Let's queue up the next one and till next time. Yeah.
All right, let's I'm gonna leave and come back. Does that stop the recording or whatever? Or do I need to leave and come back? Can we just stop recording?
No, just hit stop recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.